our audience was aged 13 to 18, so of the teenage demographic. We use this kind of audience mainly because we are also this age and we're right in the middle of this demographic. So we would be therefore able to attract them and know what attracts them and just be able to relate more to the audience, and so be able to apply what we enjoy in films to them. We found through research that this age are the primary consumers for the horror genre, so we thought that therefore our chosen horror theme would be preferred by this age group. We found that typically horror genre is very, very much gender neutral. However, it is slightly more biased towards females, which is quite unstereotypical in my eyes, because I would have associated it more with men and having to prove that they're brave enough to watch these horror genres, but apparently this isn't the case. Our audience that we're trying to attract also has to have a few psychographic features in order for them to actually relate and be attracted by our product. So firstly, they have to engage and enjoy horror movies. They also have to be not too sensitive and not too brave, because we didn't want someone who was not affected at all by our product, but at the same time we didn't want someone who was didn't enjoy it because they were too scared by it. We also found that because horror genre is a popular culture, we had to have someone who wanted to watch something of popular culture and enjoyed things like this. We had a focus group who were our age as well, and they said that they have enjoyed, engaged with the product, and from some of the things and improvements and things that they were saying, they were engaged with it and they understood where we were coming from in the ways that we were attracting them. And they also said that we had produced an attractive product to our age group. We explained to them why we had done certain things, like the casting and the costumes, and they really understood what we'd done there, and they told us how they had enjoyed these features and where we had managed to achieve this. So this suggests that we actually did manage to attract this audience through the mise-en-scène and other areas. So for the mise-en-scène, we used the low-key lighting. I mean, this is obviously a convention of horror movies, and most horror movies would need low-key lighting in order to come across as scared and build up the suspense. But also, the lighting was used to attract an audience who would sleep in the dark and sleep alone, and therefore they would be able to relate to the character and it would seem more realistic. The set, we used this set. We chose to use a lighter bedding, so we put on a pink bedding. It related to the gender of the character and also built upon the naivety of the character. Also, with the actual casting, so we had a young female teenager who was actually, the actress was age 14, so we felt that this was the younger half of our demographic, so she came across as vulnerable but also displayed the characteristics of the teenage demographic, which are stereotypical, such as curiosity but also naivety. She was female, so it would relate to the majority of our audience with having the female gender bias, and also so that they can relate directly to her, and then our male audience could relate through friends, sisters, and then they can view her in a light that they view their friends and other females in their life. Our focus group really enjoyed the casting as well. When we explained to them what we'd done with the casting and why we'd done that, they really agreed with what we'd done and said that because our focus group were all males, they said that they liked how we used an attractive young female who they could view in a way that they didn't want any harm to come to her for one reason or another, and it really engaged with that. They also enjoyed the costuming of the female, as she was in typical pyjamas, which was really appropriate for the age group, and they said that this was what they pictured most girls would wear for pyjamas, so it related to it. We also identified with the fact that we had used a dominant male implied shadow figure. They agreed that this stereotypically seemed more fitting, that the female will be more vulnerable and to the power of the male or the more dominant character. Therefore, they were unbeknowingly agreeing with the theories of the binary opposites, with the antagonist, protagonist, but also male versus female, and the dominant versus the vulnerable, and those types of binary opposites. So they agreed with that kind of area of the casting. So we also, for the rest of the set, we also had the fairy lights and the bunting, which made her look a bit younger, and also it contributed to the actual lighting aspect, and just made it so that there wasn't so much lighting going on. It also suggested an underlying fact that she may be scared of the dark and sleeps with the light on, which is something that could be related to by quite a lot of the audience who struggle with this. It also used the fairy lights to imply certain aspects about the character as an individual, which would, if like the film was to actually progress and carry on, and we had to actually make the full product, the character would come across as quite young within her friendship group. So it represents the social group that she's in, and that people within that social group have different powers and different characteristics, and that hers might be that she is the one that's looked after and that's more naive than the others possibly, and more innocent than the others. And we thought that by using certain areas of the set, and like because it's her bedroom, so it's personal to her, that this could be like a certain like aspect that could imply this, and that's one of the reasons that also influenced our decision to use fairy lights and bunting. We also identified that we might have two possible secondary audiences, and we thought that these would both be predominantly female, and they were parents and young adults. We thought that parents could relate through their children, so through a daughter, or possibly even through a younger version of themselves, so they would identify that either their daughter or themselves previously in their life had displayed the characteristics that our character displays. Also that they, through the costuming, like they wear pyjamas that are like that, or they have seen pyjamas like that in like Primark or another store like that. We also thought that this goes for our audience, our primary audience as well, but especially our secondary audience of young adults who have possibly just moved out and they're in their younger 20s or something like that. They're likely to be in a modern house or a modern flat or something like that, so they can relate to the stereotypical modern house that we use. So the house is double fronted, it's quite typical of the middle to working or lower class so it's quite relatable to everyone. It looked quite, we also used the location just because of the way that it looked, but also because it would be able to be related by quite a wide variety of audience. Also by the casting, we thought that the young adults can relate due to a younger version of themselves, and also by the fact that they are sleeping alone. They're like, because the character is isolated, like there's no other characters around, even though it's implied that there's characters sleeping in her house because she is young. She is still isolated and she doesn't go for help or anything like that. So it relates to a young adult audience who would be alone in their house at night, and possibly watching the film alone at night when they've finished work or something like that. Finally, we used Todorow's narrative theory in order to engage our audience. Todorov's theory states that there is like a narrative theory, so it's a narrative theory of structure, and we abided to this narrative theory of structure in order to engage just a audience. So the structure states that there is an equilibrium in the start, and then this is disrupted, so this is disruption to the equilibrium, then there's a resolution in order to fix the disruption, then there is order to a new equilibrium, and then the last one is that there is a new equilibrium. So all of these have different time lengths in different movies, and we used a cold opening in order to engage our audience. Based on our audience research, we asked the question about whether or not the audience enjoyed a slow build-up or a fast build-up where they don't necessarily focus so much on the characters, and we found that the majority enjoyed a fast build-up, which is known as a cold opening, which we researched. So this allowed us to have the first two sections of Todorov's theory were very, very fast and with short time frames. So we had the equilibrium was when Elle was lying in her bed and nothing was going wrong, and it was just a normal night laying in her bed. Then the disruption to the equilibrium was that she was woken up by the door slamming shut, and she was like, "What's going on downstairs?" And there was like another disruption to the equilibrium that was more major, in the fact that she was then taken. And then if the plotline was actually to progress, which is shown in our full film synopsis, that her friends and like people that she's close with then try to find a resolution, and they spend the rest of the plot finding a resolution, creating a new order, and then living life without Elle as a new equilibrium. So in that way, we were engaging our audience through the theory of Todorov. And particularly our focus group really liked the fact that they weren't having to wait for the plot to build up, and they were actually got the problem straight away, and they said that they thought that it was really good that they didn't have to wait for it to build up, and they were introduced straight away, which made it more engaging and made them want to find out what the new equilibrium was and how the resolution was happening and things like that. So that was the way how we attracted our target audience, and that was our target audience as well.